So, welcome. I am here with my new friend Finn. He is a sexuality counselor, and he is somebody who I think that you would find really interesting to get to hear from as we continue having conversations with people doing work along similar lines regarding integration, intimacy, spirituality, sexuality, and owning your authentic self. So, Finn, welcome, and it's such a pleasure to be having a conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, for reaching out to me and making this happen.
So why don't we just start off? Why don't you share a little bit about you, your story, the work you're doing, how you came to be here? Space is yours.
Okay, well, I would say, let me nutshell this. I was raised in a really fundamentalist religion, a Christian religion in the South, and my father was a minister and pretty emotionally and physically abusive with me. And so right off the bat, I think I felt like I knew I was gay. Whatever version of that I could really apprehend at that age was really young, and I started splitting a lot, and ended up going to ministry school myself. I married a woman and took a really long time to come out of the closet. It took me till I was like 31 to come out of the closet. So I say all that because I started like being gay and really open and doing the best that I could, but I realized like, okay, so coming out of the closet isn't just really where that work stops. Like I was just like finally able to be aware of how much shame I carried and how much my body didn't know how to really function sexually with someone, and when I was really feeling vulnerable. And that was like an impetus for me to start doing a lot of work around sexuality, and it became my work through various different channels, which we might get into, but that ended up becoming the springboard for me to get into this work in general in my own experience. So I've been doing this now as a profession for the last 6.5 years, and just as like profession plus just life, work, and hobby, more like 10.
Love it. And so for people who you work with, whether it's in a one-on-one setting or for working with a couple or working with a group, what does the scope of your work entail?
So great question. So my one-on-one work, couples work and even group process online is all counseling based, and it's just group process or one-on-one process or couples. And it's designed to help create circumstances and conversations for people to really get into really understanding what it is that's really stopping them in their sexual experiences from feeling good about their bodies or about what's happening, which is often not even about sex. It's like deeper layers. But then group offerings are more me coaching and doing, holding a space for not only process work like that, but like experiments and hands-on work with each other so that they can experiment with what's going on inside their bodies and use that as their actual real-time feedback, and then we process all that together. And that happens in a scalable way, like there's small groups or large groups, retreats. Some of it's clothed, some of it's not clothed. It just kind of depends on the circumstances.
Great. And just for anybody who's interested in working with you, from what I understand, you don't work with people one-on-one in a touch-based setting. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
No, you're correct about that. I do not.
Okay. Yeah. Great. I know for myself too, like I always appreciate when people come in with an expectation that's going to match what we do and be like, I love when I get like messages like, so you offer tantric massage? And I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Other wonderful people do that. Not me.
Totally. I get those calls too. People are like, so would you be helping me have orgasms? I'm like, well, do you mean like exploring what's going on for you when you're going to have an orgasm? Or do you mean like helping you actually have one mechanically? And then, yeah, that happens periodically.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
Also, quick question for you. Is
Yes.
like, do I need to like not cuss, or is like cussing okay on your channel?
No, you can say whatever the hell you want.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't like, yeah.
No,
Okay.
absolutely. We are believers in accepting all of life's beautiful rainbow expressions, including the more declamatory ones. All right, so in the work that you're doing right now, this week, today, this month, this year, what are you feeling inspired by? Like, what is something that you are just finding really meaningful, either in your homework by yourself or the work you're doing with clients, like what is making you just light up and say, oh, this really thrills me at this moment?
Dude, I love that question, and it's actually been a new experience for me to feel really turned on by slowness and like tuning into inner life more than just a professional piece. I feel like for the last 5-6 years I've been driving really hard in an outward professional, my avatar, and doing that out here, like hustling and working hard and broad net. And recently it's more like saying no to projects, spending time being quiet and doing nothing, like literally, and just being okay with that for the first time in my life. And I'm writing a lot, I'm writing a ton, and that's feeling like where I really want to be. So it's putting me in a little bit of a, like, how do I keep tending my professional life and like take off all this time just to write and be quiet and not really, keep hustling.
And because you're working on a memoir, I know is one of the things you're working on writing, correct?
I am, and I think too, just to like kind of tie it back to what I was saying, like the work around sex, like this pathway has been really powerful for me to uncover and understand, like in my own self, like what's been my core issues. And I think for all of us, sex might be the space that presents someone with what's going on at the deeper core layers of their lives, like the existential pain, fear, unworthiness, self-loathing, all that stuff. And they might experience it in sex. So they're coming with this conversation of like, this is going on for me in sex. And what they're really trying to get to is like this broken relationship with a parent or, and I think that's what's going on for me now as I've really worked through a bunch of stuff around my own sex life, where I feel really good in that space. And it's taking me deeper into this, like, oh, this wasn't ever about sex. It's about my dad, just kind of really getting that. So I think because of that, it's requiring just being more quiet, and writing is such a huge part of that process. Which you could probably relate. I know you're a writer too, and just clarifying what I'm feeling.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I think for every person, regardless of your orientation or gender identity, sex and our sexual organs and sexual desire is something that came with a lot of shame as a young person. That our society is not very open and accepting of sexual expression. But then when you're also adding in gender differences, sexuality differences, identity differences, and we learn that even before we can name it, that we are different than the quote-unquote normal. We're different than what society expects. And the amount of shame, the amount of danger we feel about ourselves, the amount of disconnect we feel from our family, our parents, our siblings. And for me, that's, I think why focusing on sex and sexuality is such a healing part of our whole identity, because it's one of the places we very early on learn shame.
100% agree. Like it's a window into the parts of the house that get you essentially to the basement. Yeah, and like you said, like I think even in the best parenting situations, like in all the literature, like there's clinical literature, there's like in psychology, it's, what's going on for people when they're having sexual issues is they're experiencing, in a broad sense, like sexual dysregulation or emotional dysregulation. And you keep tracing that back to childhood. Even if you had amazing parents in our culture, I can only talk for the American culture. Let's say you had amazing parents and they were supportive in most ways, that they still were most likely avoidant of sex, talking about sex in a way that's actually helpful for kids, just because there's so much there in our culture about it, and it's stigmatized so heavily that we're all affected by it. So every single person, even people that do a lot of work on this, are dysregulated in some way around sexuality. So it is a great fertile ground to look at emotional. When I say dysregulated, it like brings up emotional responses, like a lot of confusion, ways of using sex that maybe aren't so helpful for us, and it's like I would just say like it's a window into the deeper layers.
And then we add in the fact, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go.
And then we add in the fact too that apart from just our parents' discomfort about talking about it, we also then have our parents' own issues regarding their own sexuality. So for like example, in my family, I grew up in a family that was mildly homophobic, not like outright, but there was definitely straight is better, gay is not as good. And then add on to that too, a father who struggled with his own sexual identity. He's 83, and like 3 Christmases ago, he came out to me as bisexual. So there was that tension around him holding that for himself. And then add on to that too, having parents who had very different connections to sex and sexuality, where I have my mother, who only person she's ever had sex with in her life is my father, and my father, who's literally had sex with thousands of women, swinger, sex parties. And so there was that interpersonal tension between them about dad is bad for his sexual desire. So apart from just the awkwardness about talking about sex, then we have all of our parents shit that we as little kids, we don't necessarily know these things, but especially if you're empathic or energetically sensitive, they're in the room and they're affecting us.
100%. I totally hear that. And then also, like, and then there's antagonism too, just cultural antagonism toward our, and I'm generalizing, but our kind of sexuality, anything that's not outside this, you know, or that is outside a particular narrow window, it's like there's antagonism there, and like vicarious trauma, and then there's like invisible layers of it too, like the internalized, you know, misogyny that we all carry, or and racism, and how that shows up in a very embodied and real way in sexual connections. And then all that information is just like right there. We just don't know how to interpret it. And so, yeah, that's really why I like being in this field a lot.
Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, the internalized misogyny that we all have. But just going back to something you were saying a moment before that too, is how our society really only gives certain people permission to be quote unquote sexual. Like if you look a very specific way, you're allowed to have your shirt off in public, and you're allowed to demonstrate PDA, like if you are, you know, model-esque. But especially as a young person, nobody looks like that. No one has, you know, bulging biceps at 12 years old. And so we already learned this feeling of insufficiency. And, you know, I go to my gym now and there's all these juiced up 15-year-olds who look like they're 40. And I'm like, well, why are we doing this? Why is this considered healthy? But regarding the internalized misogyny, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot as well, in regards to, especially in the gay world, the fear we have of the feminine, the fear that we have of anything that is not quote unquote strong, dominant, masculine, powerful, that we hide those parts of ourselves. We tell ourselves that those parts are less welcome or less valuable. And really that is nothing other than misogyny and fear of the feminine and fear of women and relinquishing our power.
Totally. And it shows up like so much, and I think even people that would say, oh, I don't really think I have a problem with that, it's like, no, everybody has some version of this, because it's just like being, if you're like a tea, you're like steeped in this tea, right? You're going to be stained a little bit with the tea. Like I actually, like, maybe like just to this day, like if I'm getting fucked on my back, sometimes there's kind of a misogynist response in me about this, like, oh, I feel like a lady, you know, I'm like, what would be wrong with that? Like, that's okay, you know, if I were. And it's just so, like, it's permeated a lot. And I think a lot of men, what happens is they experience these vulnerable pieces, and then they don't want to experience that in the eye of someone that they really care about, so they only can maybe experience some of those parts of themselves that they really need to, like this feminine aspect, or what, you know, if we're generalizing. But they might just relegate that specifically to, you know, when they have anonymous sex, or, you know, sex in a special place where it's like I can like put that out of sight, out of mind, and like walk away and leave it, and I don't have to be really vulnerable there. And I see that quite a bit. And then they don't know how to integrate it, and they want to integrate it. Yeah. Do you notice that yourself, like in the work that you do with guys?
It's not so much the focus in what I tend to work on with people, because the work I do one-on-one tends to focus more on meditative aspects. But it is something that we do touch on. And it's something that actually came up for me very profoundly 2 weeks ago. I was doing a plant medicine journey with psilocybin mushrooms. And in this journey, I confronted a version of myself that was my divine feminine, was myself as a female-bodied person.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked at the level of fear that came up around that for me, because I'm like, oh, I worship the goddess and I love her and I love the divine feminine. But the message I heard is like, you don't want to accept me in yourself. You don't want to let that be there. I was like, yeah, I don't. Because in society, we are given societal approval for denying our femininity. We are given a higher level of attractiveness if we're mask, if we're butch. And to say, well, we all fight so hard to increase our societal worth. Why would I consciously do something to negate that in the eyes of society that haven't done a lot of internal work? And then the answer comes up, well, you need to, because that's how you find wholeness, is to embrace every part of you. And we all hold both parts. And anytime that we sacrifice a part of ourselves or amputate a part of ourselves, then we are, by that very definition, not whole. We are not integrated.
Totally.
So
totally, yeah. Well, it's also, it's literally experienced as like a death. It's like extinguishing for someone. Now, this is at a deep unconscious kind of level, but if my sense of security and safety in the world is predicated upon a particular look, way of holding my body, way of communicating, all the signs and codes and symbols of masculinity and power and being a white male, and the whole gamut of this, if it's like my sense of being safe in my body those are the prerequisites, then letting go of those for a moment is experienced as a death. It's like an ego death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really difficult for guys to, I think, understand that, wrap their mind around it, and choose to want to go there. And also, I think that men don't have a lot of tools or help there. We haven't had help. You get like 3 or 4 emotions as a child that you understand, like mad, sad, happy, angry, and the inner life is just like this continual fluctuation, and it's actually frightening for a lot of men to even feel the fluctuation. So on one hand, it's like you're damned if you do, like you need to, and there's a lot of pressure on men currently to, hey, get with it. And then there's a kind of like, well, they don't even know where to start. Like they really don't. And that just moves me as well.
It's part of the reason I say, like, step one on a journey of becoming, a journey of self-inquiry, is to sit in silence every day. To go back to what you were saying of like doing nothing and getting comfortable with that idea, if you don't slow down, if you don't pause, if you don't get quiet, to become aware of these things is nigh on impossible.
Totally. I 100% agree. And to be in contact with the darker aspects of our experience and honest about those, so that they are not then denied and projected onto other people or acted out unconsciously. Like vying for power, go ahead.
And then what makes everything all about this so uncomplicated is we could say, okay, just in my regular daily life, I can embrace things that are uncomfortable and maybe in the eyes of some in society would lower my societal worth. But then when we bring that into a potential sexual situation, so let's just say walking into a gay bar where maybe you're going to hook up with somebody, maybe you're not, but you're going to be in interaction of sexual energy, and people are going to be valuing you or devaluing you with their attention. And you know that there's like simple societal tricks or cues that will raise your societal value, like wearing a ball cap if you're a gay guy, or dog tags, or having bigger muscles, or wearing a shirt with your arms out. And it's like this stupid shit, but like, well, if I do these things, I'm gonna have 50 guys hit on me rather than one, and that's going to make me feel better. So fuck me integrating my feminine side, I'm just going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I laugh because I do a lot of those things.
We all do.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I go with the ball cap option. I work out every day. I like to work out for like multiple reasons. One of those is vanity, Yeah. So, yeah.
And especially being a same-sex attracted man, I think it becomes even more challenging because the body shape we're attracted to is also the body shape we inhabit. And, it's really hard when you don't feel attractive in your own body. Because, you tend to partner with people who have a similar body type to you, more or less. There's exceptions, of course, but, and then you want to feel sexy when you look in the mirror and find yourself attractive and your self-worth tied up in that. And then what do other people think? Like, it's just so layered.
Mm-hmm. Totally, man. To your comment about the feminine image within you that you're carrying, I have had moments sometimes with a client, for instance, I feel like suddenly like I'm kind of moving towards more of a woman in myself, to kind of really hold space in that. And sometimes I feel non-binary, but like it's kind of like based on what's coming in, or I actually feel just like super masculine. And well, again, what do these words even mean? But the way that I've been enculturated to believe them, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. In sex, same thing. I've been having sex with my boyfriend, and then suddenly, like one time in particular, it was really this powerful moment. I felt like, oh my God, like I felt like I had a pussy. And
I've had
it was
that
like
experience.
a total, like, I was a woman, and I thought, like I had a moment of like, well, this is kind of scary. And I was like, why is it scary? And just, can I go with this, or do I need to kind of, butch it up and like, right. And I went with it, and it was really, really hot, actually. I felt like, wow.
I've had on occasion, not only like once or twice has this happened to me, but I've had the experience where I'd be masturbating and being like, wow, this kind of feels like I have a vagina and I'm using a dildo. And it was like a really interesting experience to me to be like, oh, this is this a sense memory from another life? Is this just an imaginative extrapolation of what I assume it feels like? But it's been interesting to dive into something similar. So tell me more about your journey working with stillness. I know this is something you talked about several minutes ago now, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about at this moment, just because like I had a book come out earlier this month, and while the weeks and days leading up to it, hour-wise, wasn't filled with a lot of busyness about the book, emotionally and energetically, it was the culmination of several years of work. And now on the other side of it, I've been just feeling a great need to just like sit and look out a window, read, do nothing. And as you said, then there's the other part of my line of, yeah, but you need to be posting content. And yes, you need to be working with people, and you need to be bop, 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 bop. But also saying, yeah, but especially after a time of upheaval, how important this emotional and physical stillness is for me. So I would love to hear about your exploration of that right now.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm learning is that timing is so important on like what's going on in our world, and what we're putting our attention on can be directed from an internal sense of timing, and that everyone has a very different process with that, like what the time it takes to initiate something, be in the zenith of it, and then conclude to it and transition out of it, and all that. It's an arc, and it's not like I was taught to be like, go, do, you gotta kind of hit these markers, and I can do that. I've been schooled to do it really well. It's always been a natural skill set of mine to achieve, and to be really proficient in that, multitask really well. I network and hustle as a skill set, and I know some people that's a challenging thing for, and they're better at just maybe chilling and not, but I'm not. And so I've gotten to this point where, okay, I've built a lot with my work, and realize it's a both and. Like part of it's like, yeah, this is my life work. This has felt really good. I've been highly motivated. And then the other side of that is that I think I've also striven my whole life from a space of like, not good enough, got to do more, not good enough, got to do more, got to impress the next person. I got to like connect with someone who's going to like evaluate me and like give me approval, and
hustling for our worth.
Yeah, and I play that out a lot, like in my work, like when I've gotten different like milestones along the way, and different like levels of validation from people out there, but also people in my field, and therapists, and just other people who have really like put their approval and support behind me. That felt really good. And then I've gotten to this place now where it's like, I don't think I want that. I actually need to listen. I want to listen to what's coming inside, and finding a balance with how much I'm doing because I feel genuinely motivated versus like I have to do more, or I'm going to lose ground. And when I hear that, I'm like, no. Like, yeah, just been with the feelings, I think, that maybe some of that striving was designed to escape, you know, like just feeling small, feeling like really tender, feeling really, you know, when I'm having a hard day and feeling a sense of rejection in myself, just sitting with that, being with it, being like, this is 100% mine. This is not something that I need to get out of or blame on what happened with my boyfriend earlier, or, you know, just, so it's important for me to be here because I've not really cultivated this practice in my life to just be with it. And as a result, my writing is reflecting more of this genuine first person voice in my writing too.
One of my favorite quotes is, busy is a drug to which many people are addicted.
And sanctioned, right? It's like approved of.
Yeah, I mean, once we start like deconstructing this paradigm that the world has given us of hustle, work, do more, be online more, create more, be more out there, and we deconstruct that and say, well, if I were really living in my true sense of integration and wellness, the thing I would aspire most to from myself was an integrated, balanced, happy life. And so if I'm really interested in that as being my ultimate goal, then working 14 hours a day doesn't suit that. Working 7 days a week does not suit that. Pursuing awards and recognition and validation for a sense of worth, self-worth that we don't feel within, isn't necessarily worth the amount of life force I have to give to make those things happen. So how can I be connected to my life's work, my mission, be doing good in the world, making the world a better place, and at the same time also creating that balance for family time, partner time, friend time, downtime, play time, doing things that inspire me that don't have a positive outcome, like to just go doodle or macrame, even though it's not part of your business model, but it brings you joy. And I feel like that's something that we just, at least I wasn't taught. And then especially as a queer kid, hustling for my worth, hustling for validation, begging the world to please tell me I'm okay and I'm good enough. And it was very antithetical to that, well, just work hard or be successful and you'll be good enough model that we were taught, or I was taught.
Yeah, I was too. And yet I think I want to distinguish like kind of doing this hustle for some sort of like internalized issue that I'm experiencing versus like this idea of vocation when you're feeling called. You know, like for instance, I think I might have used this example when we talked before, like, you know, when it's time to do the work, like certain animals like really hustle and get ready for hibernation, you know, and they work really hard to build up, but then there's like a cycle to it.
Right.
So vocation demands like, oh, you want to write this book? I'm sure you can relate to that. Well, you're gonna have to really get off your ass and like really engage with what's hard to do these things. That's different though than like, I'm not good enough, I gotta do more.
Totally.
It's a different thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think the point I'm commenting is the people for whom that is their default state, right? If you've been doing that for 3 years on end, that's not it, right? If you're doing it for 2 weeks, so you're like, every day I'm hitting this hard for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to go take a few days off and just rest, meditate, and chant the mantra Om, then good for you. But if that's your constant state, like it was for me for many years, then that's something to look at. And how it's always an act of rebalancing, right? That we are always constantly having to reevaluate and check in with these things, because it's not just like, okay, I made an adjustment and I'm done. We're always shifting, we're always growing, we always need different things, and having to deepen our connection with well-being, balance, belonging, all of that.
Amen.
Now, Finn, you have a training program coming up in the fall. Do you want to just talk about that briefly so people can know what that entails?
Yeah, I work, so I co-facilitate the Tantra Coach Training Program with Jason Tantra, and his work is at Tantra for Gay Men with the number 4, gaymen.com. And the Tantra Coach Training Program is something that we came up with that would help blend some of his work, because I'm not a Tantra teacher by name, but I utilize a lot of exercises and frameworks from Tantra to integrate into my work, and so I bring different types of exercises, and that whole program is for people who are male identified and want to either use tantric practices in their work, like let's just say they're a massage therapist already and they want to integrate and try to use some of these tools in massage or yoga or whatever it is that they're teaching, to have some actual skills and some way of learning something that creates a framework, or people who are just not necessarily a practitioner but want to learn how to hold space in an erotic situation to help deepen the process. So it's not just about like having maybe an orgasm with somebody, which is fine, but if, let's say, I want to create a transformative space and hold that so that I can invite other people into it, it's really a program to kind of help understand how to do that, how to really be aware of what one's looking for in sex, and deepening our understanding of all the things like consent, boundaries and limits, and just hands-on skills too. So Jason teaches a ton of hands-on exercises for people to do with each other.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I'm stoked. Go ahead.
And just because it's a topic that we've talked about several times on this channel, is Tantra means different things based on who you're talking to, and you've got very, very like neoclassical Tantra, which is very anti-sex. That's just a euphemism. It's kind of like ashram I was in for 7 years. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got Neo-Tantra, which is very much just about sex. You've got Vajrayana Buddhist Tantra, which is we do sex and we use those sexual practices, but it's not the focus. So this is much more on the Neo-Tantra side of things, the Tantra for gay men, correct?
Yes.
Cool.
Totally.
That, which, all are beautiful, all have their place. You just want to make sure you know what you're looking for, and so you're able to find it.
And as you say that, I just laugh too, just thinking about like, aren't humans funny, and like all the different like ways of trying to figure out experience and try to figure out what we're doing and understand ourselves and what's happening around us, and so many different doorways.
Totally. Well, Finn, I am so grateful for this opportunity to connect with you and share with you. If you're up for having another conversation together here, I would absolutely love it. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people watching today?
No, I think maybe check out my blog. I do a lot of writing. I blog. I write for Himeros TV. There's like links on my website to all the different writing things that I do. And there will be more writing in the future, so track that part.
And you're based on the West Coast for anybody who is interested in working with you in person, is that correct?
I don't do in-person currently with clients.
Okay.
I'm doing everything on Zoom, so anyone can reach out to me. Yeah, and in person would be at events like the Tantra Coach Training Program, which is happening in October, end of October. It's on my website if you're interested, and it's going to be held in San Diego this year. Beautiful. It's a 1-week training program with me and Jason.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for joining us in this beautiful conversation today, and wishing you all well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.